Hello, welcome to the Learn English Lab.
Hi there. Great to be diving into this topic.
Today we're diving into something, really fundamental to human connection. Talking about our hobbies and interests in English.
Yeah, it's huge.
It's more than just, small talk. It's like a window into who we are, what makes us tick.
Definitely. Our pastimes, our passions, they're these amazing connectors, aren't they?
Mm-hmm.
Think about it, that instant bond you feel when someone shares your enthusiasm for something.
Absolutely.
That resonance often goes way beyond just words.
Totally. And for anyone learning English, this is such a fantastic space for practicing.
It really is.
When you're talking about something you genuinely enjoy, the language just seems to flow more naturally. Right?
Exactly. It becomes less about sticking to rigid grammar rules.
Yeah.
And more about, authentic self-expression.
That's such a vital point. When you're immersed in talking about something that excites you, you're naturally more invested in finding the right words at the right phrasing.
Mm-hmm. Your real interest kind of shines through. It's infectious,
So, okay, let's get practical. How can we actually get these conversations started? What are some easy ways to ask someone about their hobbies?
Right. There are several really inviting ways in. You could start simply with, what do you enjoy doing in your free time?
Classic.
Or maybe, do you have any particular hobbies or passions? That's a bit more direct.
Okay.
For a more informal feel, something like, what's a fun thing you like to do on the weekends? Usually works well.
Nice and casual.
Or if you maybe have a flinch about their interests, you could try, are you into hiking or whatever the activity is?
Gotcha. Those are really good starting points. Now, flip side, what if someone asks you that question? How can you share your own interests naturally?
Good question. You can be quite straightforward. Just say, I really love cooking, or my favorite hobby is playing guitar.
Simple enough.
Or you could give a little more context, like in my spare time, I usually go cycling. Or maybe convey how much you like it with, I'm truly passionate about photography.
Right, showing that enthusiasm.
Yeah.
Often, though, the conversation really gets going when you show you're genuinely interested in their hobby. What are some good ways to respond and, keep that dialogue rolling?
Yes. Showing genuine curiosity is absolutely key here. Questions like, wow, that sounds fascinating. How did you first get into that? That works wonders.
Mm-hmm. Shows you're listening.
Exactly. Or if their hobby is totally new to you, you could say something like, oh, I've never tried pottery, but it sounds really interesting.
Okay.
Asking about how involved they are, like how often do you get to go climbing, or inviting them to share more detail with, could you tell me a bit more about competitive chess? That shows you're really engaged.
Yeah, it draws them out.
Definitely. And offering encouragement, or maybe even asking for advice. Like, wow, you're really skilled at knitting. How long have you been doing it? Or, I'd love to try kayaking someday. Do you have any tips for someone just starting out? That can really build a connection.
Let's try and paint a picture. Imagine meeting someone new, maybe at an English language exchange event. How might a conversation about hobbies actually, unfold?
Okay, picture this. You might say something simple like, hi, I'm practicing my English. What do you like to do for fun?
Nice opener.
And they might reply, hey, nice to meet you. I'm really into rock climbing. I go to a climbing gym a couple times a week. What about you?
Okay, simple back and forth.
Yeah. And you could then respond, oh, that's cool. I actually enjoy salsa dancing. It's just so full of energy. Have you ever tried dancing?
Right, sharing and asking back.
Exactly. It's that simple exchange, using those initial questions, enthusiastic responses, that keeps the momentum going. And notice how follow-up questions like, do you climb indoors or do you ever go outdoor climbing? Or asking, what got you interested in it in the first place? Those kinds of questions really foster a natural flow.
Yeah, that definitely makes it seem less intimidating. Are there any particular things English learners should maybe keep in mind during these kinds of chats?
Oh, certainly. A few things can help. Practicing the pronunciation of key words related to your hobbies is really beneficial.
Good tip.
Try saying phrases like, I'm really into, with a bit of a upward inflection, to show your excitement.
Right, that intonation.
Yeah. Also, maybe having a few questions ready, maybe 3 to 5 you feel comfortable with, like, what's your favorite hobby? Or what do you do to relax? That can really help you navigate any awkward pauses.
Like having something in your back pocket.
Precisely. And honestly, don't be afraid to use natural filler words. Things like,
Really?
Yeah. Those little pauses can actually make your speech sound more natural while you're just, gathering your thoughts.
That's counterintuitive, but it makes sense. Now, obviously, having the right vocabulary is crucial. What kind of words and phrases should learners focus on?
Right. Vocabulary. It's helpful to think about it in stages, perhaps.
Yep.
For beginners, focusing on core words like hobby, free time, enjoy, fun. That's a solid start. Plus basic action verbs for common hobbies. Play football, read books, watch movies.
The fundamentals.
Exactly. Then intermediate learners can expand that. They can bring in words like passionate, relaxing, creative, and verbs like collect or pursue.
Getting more descriptive.
And they can start using common pairings like take up a hobby or get into something new.
Okay, and what about for more advanced learners, those looking to add a bit more flair?
Good question. Advanced learners can aim higher. They can incorporate words like avid, immerse, eclectic, maybe more nuanced verbs and phrases like deeply absorbed in or keenly pursue.
Ooh, nice.
And they could even start using some hobby-related idioms or expressions like maybe bitten by the bug or it's right up my alley.
Idioms, that definitely adds flavor. But it's not just about general vocabulary, is it? I mean, each hobby probably has its own specific language.
Oh, absolutely. That's a great point. If you're talking sports, knowing terms like team sport, individual sport, equipment, fitness, compete, that's essential.
Right.
For the arts, you'll want words like sketch, compose, craft, inspiration, maybe even masterpiece.
Okay.
Tech and gaming have their own world, right? Multiplayer, strategy, develop, gadget, virtual reality.
So much jargon there.
Isn't there just? And if you're into collecting, you might use words like rare, antique, catalog, vintage, auction.
Wow.
Having even some of the specific vocabulary makes a huge difference in how detailed and frankly how interesting your conversation can be.
Okay, let's maybe zoom in on some common hobbies and how to chat about them. Sports, always a big one.
Super common. So when talking sports and physical activities, remember those key terms we mentioned: team sport, individual sport. You can discuss equipment, fitness. A simple exchange could be, do you play any sports?
Yeah.
I'm going to reply, yeah, I'm really into basketball. Play with friends every weekend.
And I could say, oh, nice. I love running. It's a great way for me to unwind, and I always feel so much better afterwards.
Perfect. And learners can practice using comparatives here too. Like running is more, therapeutic for me than playing soccer.
Oh, good idea.
And sharing personal goals. Like I'm actually training to run a half marathon next year.
That adds a personal touch. What about creative stuff like art or music?
Creative hobbies. These are wonderful for using descriptive language. Think about words like sketch, compose, craft, inspiration. Imagine someone saying, I find painting landscapes incredibly calming. Do you have any creative hobbies?
Okay.
The other person might say, oh, cool, I play the piano. What kind of paintings do you usually do? See, it opens the door to talk about techniques, inspiration, past experiences.
Right.
Learners here can focus on using really vivid adjectives, vibrant colors, melodious music, and practicing the past tense to talk about things they've made or done.
Makes sense. Technology and gaming seem like another huge area these days.
Oh, absolutely massive. For tech and gaming, you'll hear words like multiplayer, strategy, develop, gadget, virtual.
Okay.
A typical chat might start, are you into video games at all?
Yeah.
And the response could be, yeah, I'm a big fan of strategy games like StarCraft or Civilization. What about your hobbies?
And you could say, oh, that's interesting. I'm actually currently learning to code in Python. It's pretty challenging, but, really rewarding too.
Great example. Learners can also try to pick up some common gaming slang or terms.
Oh, yeah.
And use the present continuous, like you just did, I'm currently learning, to talk about ongoing projects or things they're doing right now.
Good point. And what about those maybe slightly more niche interests? Collecting things or maybe bird watching?
Right, the less common hobbies.
Yeah.
These can actually spark really fascinating conversations because they're often unexpected.
True.
Relevant vocabulary here might include rare, antique, observe, catalog enthusiast. Someone might say, well, I collect vintage maps. I've got some from the 17th century. Do you collect anything?
Wow. Okay.
And the other person could respond, that's incredible. I don't really collect visible things, but I'm actually an avid bird watcher.
See, totally different, but interesting.
Exactly. And here, using superlatives, the rarest, the most exciting find, and practicing telling little stories about your experiences can make these chats really captivating.
It's also worth thinking about where these conversations happen, right? Like at school or university.
Definitely. In those settings, talks about hobbies are often pretty informal, just pop up naturally. Maybe you're in a study group and someone says, man, we've been hitting the books hard. What does everyone do to unwind?
Yeah, happens all the time.
And someone might mention their photography, another talks about playing online chess or maybe watching anime. The language is generally quite relaxed. Lots of present simple for habits. I usually go hiking on Saturdays, and it's a great chance to invite people, hey, we're going climbing this weekend. Want to come?
Nice. What about in a work setting? Can feel a bit different.
It can, yeah. Even at work, hobbies can be a good way to connect with colleagues, maybe during lunch or at a company picnic sort of thing.
Right.
The tone might be a little more professional, perhaps, but still warm and friendly. You could ask, it's nice to have a break from the spreadsheets. What do you enjoy doing outside of work?
Good way to phrase it.
And someone might mention they love cycling, or maybe they're really into baking. Using the past tense for recent activities works well here. I baked a sourdough loaf last weekend.
Sourdough.
Right. And maybe even offering to share. I can bring some in sometime. That helps build camaraderie.
Okay, and lastly, the online world. So much interaction happens there now.
Huge area. Online platforms like language learning forums or social media groups focused on interests, they offer tons of chances to discuss hobbies.
Yeah.
The language might be a bit more casual again, maybe using emojis to show enthusiasm.
Sure.
But it's still good practice, especially when writing, to use full sentences and definitely follow up with specific questions to keep that conversation going digitally.
Makes sense. Now, for English learners, we know there can be some specific, roadblocks when trying to talk about hobbies. What are some common challenges?
Yeah, there definitely can be. One really common one is just limited vocabulary.
Right.
Learners might struggle to find the exact word for something specific about their hobby, or maybe they don't understand a term someone else uses.
So what's the fix?
Well, a good strategy is to actively try and learn, say, 5 or 10 new hobby-related words each week, and then consciously use them. Use a dictionary, look things up.
Okay. Active learning.
Another hurdle can just be shyness or, a lack of confidence.
Performance anxiety.
Kind of, yeah. Starting with written practice, maybe online, or joining smaller, more supportive language exchange groups can really help build that confidence gradually.
That sounds helpful. I can also imagine that understanding different accents or just fast speech could be tough.
Oh, for sure. Accents and speed are classic challenges. To tackle that, listening to podcasts like this one or watching videos about your hobbies in English can be incredibly helpful.
Topic-specific listening.
Exactly. You get used to different ways people speak, the specific vocabulary and context, and you can even pause and repeat phrases to work on your own pronunciation.
Smart.
And finally, just being aware of cultural differences in hobbies is useful. Maybe research common pastimes in English-speaking countries, or just be brave and ask native speakers about what they enjoy. It broadens your understanding and makes conversation smoother.
Okay. So for learners who are feeling a bit more comfortable, are there any sort of advanced tips to really boost their fluency when talking hobbies?
Absolutely. Once you've got the basics, you can definitely level up. Start trying to weave in some idiomatic expressions related to hobbies.
Like the ones you mentioned earlier.
Yeah, like I'm hooked on gaming, or
Yeah.
photography is right up my alley, and it sounds much more natural.
Okay.
Another thing is varying your sentence structure. Don't just use simple sentences. Mix in compound and complex sentences. It makes your English sound more sophisticated.
Adds rhythm.
It does. And don't just state facts. Share your personal opinions. Say things like, I think hiking is just the best way to connect with nature. Or, for me, cooking is incredibly therapeutic.
Show your personality.
Exactly. And lastly, tell little stories. Share brief anecdotes about memorable experiences you've had related to your hobbies. That makes conversations so much more engaging and, memorable for everyone.
This has been such a great exploration, really, into just talking about hobbies in English. It really highlights how important these everyday chats are for language learners.
It really does. Talking about what you enjoy, it's not just about ticking off language practice boxes, is it?
No.
It's about forging real connections, sharing who you are, and learning about others too. By, using the phrases we talked about, building that vocabulary and just getting involved. You absolutely can become more comfortable and confident.
So the takeaway is, be curious, be enthusiastic, stay open to learning about what other people love doing. Start practicing, maybe even today, and you'll find it gets easier and honestly, more enjoyable to talk about what you love.
Well said.
And hey, if you found this deep dive helpful, please do give us a like, share it with someone who might benefit, and subscribe to the channel for more content like this.
Yeah, definitely do that. Hello, welcome to the Learn English Lab.
Hi there.
Today, we're diving into something really common for a lot of people. Conversations between roommates in English.
That's right.
It's a fantastic chance to understand how English is actually used in those everyday sort of practical situations. Whether you're, living with others right now, or maybe you just want to get a better handle on daily interactions.
Exactly. And these chats between roommates, they really are a perfect snapshot of real-world English communication.
Yeah. How so?
Well, they cover just about everything, don't they? From the really practical stuff, like figuring out who's doing the dishes.
The classics.
To, the more interpersonal side, getting along, building a comfortable home environment together, all that.
And for anyone learning English, these kinds of interactions are, they're gold mines, really.
Totally invaluable.
You get so much practice with everyday language. You start picking up on those cultural norms that aren't always spelled out.
Right, the nuances.
And you just become more fluent in a really natural, kind of unforced way. So we're going to explore some typical scenarios today, maybe highlight some key vocabulary.
Yeah, some useful words and phrases.
And offer some tips, hopefully helpful pointers, to help you feel, more confident and clear in these conversations.
And that's useful whether your roommates are native English speakers or if they're also learning the language, right? It's all about communication.
Exactly. It applies across the board.
Indeed. I mean, the whole dynamic of living with roommates, it naturally involves both the, let's say, logistical side and the social side.
Logistical,
like, talking about dividing up household tasks, handling the shared expenses, the bills and stuff, and setting up those vital house rules that just help everyone live together more smoothly.
Makes sense.
But then beyond that, there's also the other element, like building a connection, expressing your preferences, maybe working through disagreements if they pop up.
Okay, let's unpack that a bit then. You mentioned tasks, chores. That seems like a fundamental part of roommate talk.
Oh, absolutely. Who handles what around the place?
Yeah, everything from just daily tidying up to maybe the bigger, less frequent jobs.
Precisely. Discussions about chores are really, a central piece of roommate communication.
So what does that usually involve?
Well, these chats often involve assigning specific tasks, maybe creating some kind of system, a rota or something.
Right, so everyone knows what they're supposed to do.
Exactly. And also addressing times when maybe those responsibilities haven't quite been met.
Okay. Can you give us an example, maybe?
Sure. Let's imagine 3 roommates, say Alex, Maria, and Sam. They sit down because, the kitchen's gotten a bit disorganized lately, and they want to improve how they share the tasks.
Right, a common scenario.
Very common. And what's interesting in their kind of exchange is often the collaborative feel. Maybe Maria suggests, hey, what about a chore chart? Something visual.
That's practical.
Yeah. And maybe Sam's quite open, says something like, look, I don't mind vacuuming, but I'm not great at remembering to take the rubbish out.
Okay, so honesty about strengths and weaknesses.
Exactly. Then maybe Alex jumps in, suggests specific tasks for each person, maybe rotating weekly.
And Maria might add, yeah, and let's set a specific day for cleaning the bathroom, something like that.
And importantly, perhaps Sam stresses, we need to write this down so we don't forget.
Right. The follow-through.
This kind of short dialogue, it really shows several key bits of vocabulary for this topic, doesn't it?
Like what?
Well, the word chore itself, obviously a routine task. The verb split, meaning to divide things up. Rotate, for taking turns. You might hear the word messy to describe the kitchen.
Yeah.
And chart for that visual schedule.
And thinking about learners, there's some really useful takeaways here, aren't there?
Definitely. Like using polite phrasing when you're assigning or suggesting tasks.
So instead of sounding demanding.
Right. You might say, would you mind taking out the rubbish? Or could you handle the vacuuming this week? Those softer approaches.
Yeah, they can make a big difference to the atmosphere.
They really can. Politeness helps maintain those good relationships. Also, it's useful to be aware of modal verbs, like can, could, should, when you're suggesting or negotiating.
Like we could try rotating chores weekly?
Exactly. Or should we make a chart? And the importance of being really clear and specific avoids misunderstandings later.
So saying, can you vacuum the living room every Friday instead of just Can you vacuum sometime?
Precisely. Clarity is key.
Okay, so chores is one big area. What's another one that needs clear communication?
Well, finances, of course.
Money, yes. Can sometimes feel a bit delicate.
It definitely can. So clarity is absolutely essential when you're discussing things like rent, utilities, maybe shared grocery costs.
Right, so an example here.
Okay, imagine roommates, Emma and Liam. They get an electricity bill, and it's, well, noticeably higher than usual. Yeah, so that prompts a conversation. Emma might suggest, maybe the air conditioning was left running a bit too much.
Plausible.
Liam agrees it might be the case. And they reach a solution. Okay, let's split this higher bill equally this time.
Okay.
And then maybe set some guidelines for AC use going forward, Let's try not to leave it on when we're out or something.
Makes sense. Practical.
And Emma might even mention, okay, I'll send you my half via Mention's payment app name, which is super realistic these days.
Very true. So vocabulary here.
Some crucial ones. Utilities, that covers services like electricity, water, gas, internet.
Got it.
The phrase split evenly, which just means divide the cost equally. We mentioned a payment app name. Those are common nouns now. And maybe the adjective fair, like, yeah, splitting it seems fair.
And tips for learners when talking money.
Well, practicing numbers and quantifiers accurately is important when you're talking costs. Getting the amounts right.
Yeah, don't want confusion there.
Definitely not. Also, having some phrases ready for agreeing on financial stuff, like you said, that sounds fair, or okay, I'm good with that, or I'm okay with that.
Simple agreement phrases.
Exactly. And it's usually wise to be a bit tactful when discussing money. Maybe phrase requests like, hey, could you send your share soon? Rather than something potentially more abrupt.
Good point. Gentler approach. Okay, so beyond the practical stuff like chores and money, what about just living together rules, boundaries?
Yes. Vital for a respectful living environment. Establishing house rules and boundaries.
What kind of things does this cover?
Often things like noise levels, having guests over, respecting each other's personal space, maybe rules about shared areas like the living room or kitchen.
Right. Let's see an example.
Okay. Maybe Priya needs to talk to her roommate, Tom. Perhaps he was playing music quite loudly late last night and she had an early start the next day.
Okay. Common issue.
Yeah. So Priya might approach Tom and say something like, hey, Tom, could we chat for a sec about last night? And explains the situation.
How does Tom react, ideally?
Ideally, Tom apologizes immediately. Oh, I'm really sorry, I didn't realize. And maybe he asks, what time was it? I want to be more mindful. That shows consideration.
That's it?
And then what follows is often a constructive suggestion. Maybe Priya says, would it be okay if we had some quiet hours, say after 10 p.m. on weeknights?
Proposing a clear rule.
Exactly. And Tom's response might be, yeah, absolutely. Sorry about that. I'll definitely keep it down. And hey, if I'm ever too loud again, just tell me right away.
Good communication there. And Priya might offer the same back.
Precisely, that reciprocity.
So vocabulary from that.
Keep it down, meaning reduce noise. Boundaries, those personal limits. Appreciate, like I'd appreciate it if, to express gratitude or make a polite request. The adjective noisy, obviously, and right away, meaning immediately.
And learning tips here.
Again, using softening phrases can help avoid sounding confrontational. I was wondering if, or would it be okay if, things like that.
Less direct.
Yeah. Also, practicing how to apologize sincerely and how to acknowledge when you've made a mistake that's really key for smoothing things over.
Taking responsibility.
Right. And finally, just being receptive to feedback from your roommates, being open to hearing their perspective.
Makes sense. But, it's not all about chores and rules and problems, is it?
Oh, definitely not.
A big part of living with roommates is also just the social side, right? Building rapport, having casual chats.
Absolutely. Those more informal conversations are super important for creating a positive, friendly atmosphere in the house or apartment.
Yeah, makes it feel more like a home.
Exactly. So think about, say, Sarah and Jamal just chatting over coffee on Saturday morning, maybe making plans for the weekend.
Okay.
Sarah might start, hey, got any plans this weekend? Jamal says, nah, just gonna chill, probably.
Relax.
Yeah. And Sarah might say, oh, I heard about that new cafe downtown. Want to check it out later?
Making a suggestion.
Right. And maybe Jamal's enthusiastic. Oh, yeah, I saw some good reviews. What time were you thinking? Shows interest. Nice. And they quickly agree. How about around 2? Sounds good. Count me in.
Simple, easy interaction.
Very. And this kind of relaxed chat introduces some really common informal expressions in everyday English, like chill, meaning relax, check out, meaning to visit or look at something new, count me in, which is just an informal way to say, yes, I'll join you or I'll participate.
Right.
We also heard reviews, meaning opinions about a place, and maybe they talk about pastries or other things at the cafe.
Okay. And tips for learners wanting to improve these social chats.
Yeah, try using open-ended questions to keep the conversation flowing, not just yes/no questions.
Like, what are you up to instead of, are you busy?
Exactly. Also, practicing those informal contractions, wanna for want to, gonna for going to, they make you sound more natural in casual speech.
Good tip.
And just showing enthusiasm. It helps build that connection with your roommates. Smiling, using positive language.
Yeah, makes a difference. Okay, so we've covered chores, money, rules, social stuff. But living together isn't always smooth sailing, is it?
No, that's very true. Misunderstandings can definitely happen.
Yeah.
Cultural differences might emerge, and sometimes, conflicts can arise. Knowing how to navigate those challenges in English is also really important.
Right, that's just the reality of sharing a space. So when conflicts do come up, maybe because someone didn't do their chore, like we talked about.
Right, unmet expectations.
How should people handle that?
Well, the key is usually to address it calmly and constructively. Avoid letting it fester.
Okay. Example time.
Sure. Let's say Chloe is feeling a bit frustrated because the kitchen is consistently messy when it's, say, Mark's turn, according to their chart.
Okay.
So she approaches Mark. Instead of being accusatory, like, you always leave a mess, she might use an I statement.
How does that work?
Something like, hey, Mark, can I talk to you for a sec? I've noticed the kitchen's been a bit messy lately. And honestly, I'm feeling a bit frustrated because it makes it hard for me to cook when I get home.
Focusing on the observation and her feeling.
Exactly. And a positive reaction from Mark would be an immediate apology. Oh gosh, Chloe, I'm really sorry. You're right. Let's clean it up together right now.
That's good, taking ownership.
Yeah. And then Chloe might follow up constructively. Thanks, Mark. Maybe we could try to stick to the chore chart a bit more consistently.
Suggesting a solution.
Right. And Mark agrees, maybe even adds, yeah, definitely. I'll set a reminder on my phone so I don't forget.
Proactive. Okay, vocabulary here.
For a sec, that short, informal way to say for a second or for a moment. The feeling frustrated, annoyed. The phrase stick to, meaning to follow or adhere to a plan or schedule.
Right.
We also heard reminder and the adjective constructive, describing that helpful, solution-focused approach.
And the big tip here seems to be those I statements.
Absolutely. Using I statements, I feel frustrated when, or I notice that, helps you express your feelings without putting the other person on the defensive. It avoids blame.
Instead of you always or you never.
Exactly those. Also, suggesting solutions together and acknowledging apologies gracefully, those are really important steps in resolving conflict effectively.
Makes sense. You also mentioned cultural differences possibly causing issues.
Yes, that can sometimes lead to misunderstandings in a shared living space, especially in diverse households.
How so?
Well, roommates from different backgrounds might just have different unspoken expectations about things like, say, communication styles, or maybe standards of cleanliness, or even sharing food.
Food sharing.
Yeah. So consider a situation, maybe Ayesha and Elena. There's a misunderstanding about some yogurt in the fridge. Elena, perhaps coming from a culture where sharing food among housemates is really common, just helps herself, not realizing it belonged specifically to Aisha.
Okay, an honest mistake based on cultural norms.
Right. Aisha's response ideally is understanding. She might say, oh, hey, Elena, just so you know, that was actually my yogurt I was saving. Then suggests, maybe going forward, we could label our personal food items.
Practical solution.
Exactly. Elena apologizes. Oh, I'm so sorry, Aisha. I didn't realize. Let me replace that for you. And maybe she even builds on it. Or how about we have one shelf in the fridge that's for shared food anyone can use?
Oh, that's a good idea too. Collaborative problem solving.
Precisely.
Vocabulary from that one.
Label, meaning to put a name or mark on something. Replace, to get a new one of something taken or used. Shared, meaning for common use.
Got it.
And we also heard misunderstanding, obviously, and the word norm, referring to those typical cultural expectations or behaviors.
And advice for learners navigating these cultural waters.
Number one is probably asking questions gently to understand the other person's perspective or cultural background better. Oh, where I'm from, we usually do this. Or could you tell me a bit more about...
Curiosity over judgment.
Yes. Being patient when you're explaining your own perspective too. And, as always, using apologies can really help ease any tension that might arise from a misunderstanding.
Good advice. So are there any sort of overarching tips for English learners dealing with any of these roommate conversations?
Yeah, definitely a few general pointers. Practicing active listening is huge. Really trying to understand what your roommate is saying, not just waiting for your turn to talk.
Paying full attention.
Right, and don't be afraid to ask for clarification. If you don't understand something, it's much better to say, sorry, could you explain that? Or what does that word mean? Than to just guess.
Yep, prevents further issues.
Absolutely. Also, familiarizing yourself with some common informal English idioms, phrasal verbs, the stuff people actually use in casual chat.
Like the examples we've discussed.
Exactly. Finding that balance between being polite and being direct enough to get your point across is also key. It's a skill to practice.
Tricky balance sometimes.
It can be. And actually practicing, maybe role-playing scenarios with a friend or teacher. Keeping a vocabulary notebook to jot down new words or phrases you hear your roommates use.
Oh, good idea.
And finally, just viewing mistakes as totally normal, a natural part of learning. Don't let the fear of making a mistake stop you from communicating.
Excellent points. So just to recap then, we've kind of explored this whole landscape of roommate conversations in English.
Yeah, quite a bit.
Looked at common topics, chores, bills, house rules, just hanging out. And we also touched on navigating those trickier bits, like resolving conflicts, understanding cultural differences.
That's right. And remember, the language used in these everyday chats, it's just invaluable for your learning journey. It really is.
Yeah.
Pay close attention to how people phrase things naturally, the informal expressions they use without thinking, and, how they navigate different social dynamics in conversation.
It's like a living language lab.
Exactly. So maybe take a moment now, you listening. Think about the last casual English conversation you had. Could be with anyone.
What felt easy? What maybe felt a bit challenging?
Yeah. And how might some of the vocabulary or the tips we discussed today, how might they be useful for you in future interactions?
That's a good reflection point.
And it brings up maybe a final thought for you. How can you actively look for, or maybe even create, more opportunities to practice these kinds of everyday English conversations? Not just roommate talks, but any casual chat.
Good question to ponder.
Yep.
And of course, to continue practicing and expanding your English language skills.
Keep learning.
Be sure to like, share, and subscribe to this YouTube channel.
Thanks for tuning in.